What would you do if you finally bought your dream home, only to find out that your neighbor, and an entire HOA you never signed up for, was hell-bent on taking it from you? When I first laid eyes on my land, I knew it was exactly what I had been working toward my entire life. 15 acres of open fields, dense trees, and quiet serenity, a place where I could breathe without the constant drone of traffic, the suffocating weight of city life, or the ridiculous rules of suburban HOAs. After years of grinding away at a corporate job, scraping by just to afford rent in a cramped apartment, I finally had my escape. At first, everything seemed perfect. My nearest neighbor was still far enough away that I didn't have to worry about nosy people watching my every move. Or at least, that's what I thought. Because from the moment I arrived, something felt off. The neighbors weren't friendly, or even neutral. They were watching. I'd catch glimpses of them peering out from their porches, whispering as I passed by at the grocery store. And then there was Karen. The first time I met her, she seemed polite enough. Well-dressed, a little too put together for a rural neighborhood, with that tight-lipped, practiced smile that never quite reached her eyes. She introduced herself with a tone of authority, like she expected me to recognize her. I didn't. She didn't like that. I didn't know she was the HOA president at the time because, as far as I knew, there was no HOA. My property wasn't part of the subdivision, it was independent land, completely outside their jurisdiction. But Karen? Karen didn't see it that way. I should have realized it sooner, but it wasn't until I found the letter, that first ridiculous violation notice sitting in my mailbox, that I knew exactly what I was dealing with. I pulled the letter from my mailbox, expecting maybe a local newsletter or a welcome packet from a nearby town office. Instead, it was a crisp, official-looking document stamped with the HOA's logo. I didn't belong to an HOA, I knew that. I had done my research before buying this land. So why was I holding an HOA violation notice in my hands? The letter was direct and condescending, as if scolding me like a child who had broken a household rule. Violation: unauthorized vehicle parking on grass. It stated that my truck, which I had parked near my cabin workshop while clearing land, was in violation of the community's standards. Then came the kicker, ****, a warning that further non-compliance would result in fines, ****. I felt my jaw clench. There was no way this was legitimate. My land wasn't inside the HOA's boundaries, and their rules didn't apply to me. This had to be a mistake. I decided to go straight to the source. Karen. Walking up her neatly manicured driveway, I felt the weight of the neighborhood's silent stares. When she answered the door, she looked completely unsurprised to see me, almost smug. "You're here to talk about the letter," she said, more of a statement than a question. "Yes," I said, holding it up. "This has to be some kind of mistake. My property isn't part of the HOA." Karen's lips curled into a thin, knowing smile. "Oh, I see where the confusion is. While you're not technically within the HOA, your property is adjacent to it. That means we have certain community expectations that extend beyond just the official members. We have standards to maintain." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Karen, you can't fine me for something that doesn't apply to me." She crossed her arms, tilting her head slightly. "You'll find that the HOA has a vested interest in ensuring all surrounding properties adhere to our guidelines. If we allowed every new landowner to start doing whatever they pleased, it would impact property values. I'm sure you understand." I did understand. She wasn't enforcing rules. She was testing me. Seeing how much I'd push back, ****. I took a breath, forcing myself to stay calm. "Look, I appreciate your concern, but this is my land. I'm not moving my truck. I'm not following HOA rules. End of discussion." Karen's smile never wavered, but something colder flashed behind her eyes. "You'll want to reconsider that stance. If you refuse to cooperate, the HOA has other ways of handling non-compliance. I walked away, gripping the letter in my fist. I wasn't about to be bullied off my own land. But Karen? She had no intention of letting this go. The next morning, an unmarked white van pulled up to my driveway. A man in a neatly pressed blue polo stepped out, the HOA logo embroidered on his chest. He looked around slowly, as if inspecting the land before even acknowledging me. "You the new owner?" he asked, voice flat. "Yeah. What's this about?" He pulled out a clipboard, flipping through pages with a deliberate slowness that set my teeth on edge. "We've received several complaints about your property," he said, glancing up at me with barely disguised amusement. "The HOA has concerns regarding vehicle placement, land maintenance, and adherence to aesthetic standards." I let out a humorless laugh. "This isn't even HOA land." The man shrugged. "Karen has brought it to our attention that your property's appearance could negatively impact the community." I clenched my fists. "This is harassment." He smiled. "It's just an inspection." For the next 30 minutes, I was forced to stand there as he walked my land like he owned it. He scribbled notes, measured distances between my structures, took photos without asking. When he finished, he gave me a polite nod and walked back to his van. "We'll be in touch," he said before driving off. That night, I barely slept. Karen was pushing, seeing how far she could go before I broke, but I wasn't breaking. If she wanted a fight, she was going to get one. 2 days later, she showed up at my property again, but this time, she wasn't alone. Karen strode up my driveway with 2 HOA board members, Linda Thornton and Rick Langley. Both looked just as self-assured as she did, their arms crossed as if they had already made some kind of decision about me before even speaking. "You think you can just move in here and ignore all the rules?" Karen called out, voice carrying that fake sweetness that made my skin crawl. I stood my ground. "What rules? I'm not in your HOA." She let out a sharp breath, shaking her head like I was being deliberately difficult. "Ethan, this isn't just about a piece of paper. This is about the community. The neighborhood has a certain order that needs to be maintained. And frankly, we're already receiving multiple complaints about you from concerned residents." I glanced at Rick and Linda, who both nodded like parrots in agreement. "Oh yeah?" I shot back. "Name one." Karen didn't flinch. "Your truck is an eyesore. Your land is unkempt. People are worried about property values. And, quite frankly, they're concerned about what kind of people you might bring in." My stomach turned. What kind of people? That was when I realized, this wasn't just about land use, it was about who they thought I was. I took a step forward, voice steady. "You don't have any authority here. This is my land. And I don't care how many of your board members you bring to my doorstep, I'm not following rules that don't apply to me." Karen's smug expression faltered for just a second before she recovered. "We'll see about that," she said coolly. "The HOA has ways of dealing with uncooperative residents." And then she turned and walked away, her board members flanking her like guards. That was the moment I knew this was more than just a petty dispute. Karen wasn't just enforcing HOA rules. She was coming for me, The next morning, I woke up to something strange. A county zoning violation notice was taped to my front door. Confused, I ripped it off and scanned the letter. It claimed that my property was under investigation for illegal structures and improper land use. My heart pounded as I read further. There had been multiple complaints filed against me. I didn't need to guess who was behind it. Karen wasn't just using the HOA to harass me, she had gone straight to the county. She had reported me for violations that didn't exist, hoping the government would step in where she couldn't. If the county found anything wrong, they could issue fines, put restrictions on my land, maybe even stop me from developing it at all. I grabbed my phone and called the zoning office, demanding to know what these so-called violations were. A bored-sounding clerk informed me that, according to the complaints, I had been *** causing environmental damage, altering land without permits, and constructing unauthorized buildings. "This is all false," I said through gritted teeth. "That's what the inspection is for," the clerk replied. "An official will be out in the next few days to assess the claims." I barely managed to thank him before hanging up. My hands were shaking with rage. Karen was escalating, fast. And she wasn't done yet. That afternoon, I went inside to grab a drink after hours of clearing brush. When I turned on the tap, nothing came out. I twisted the handle back and forth, but all I got was a weak gurgle. I checked the rest of the house. No water. I called the utility company, already dreading what I was about to hear. "Looks like a service termination request was filed earlier this week," the rep said. "What?" My stomach dropped. "I never filed anything." The rep hesitated. "It was submitted under the HOA's authority. It says here the property is vacant." Karen. She had actually tried to cut off my utilities. I slammed the phone down and stormed straight to the next HOA meeting. The second I stepped inside, the conversation stopped. The board members, Karen included, turned to look at me as if I was the intruder in my own neighborhood. I locked eyes with Karen. She was calm, smiling, as if she'd been expecting me. "What the hell did you do?" I demanded. "You shut off my water?" Karen raised an eyebrow. "Oh, Ethan, don't be dramatic. There must have been some clerical error. But since you're here, we should discuss some of your growing violations." The audacity of this woman. I took a step closer, voice low and firm. "You're playing a dangerous game, Karen." She tilted her head, amusement flickering in her eyes. "Am I?" She wasn't scared. She wasn't backing down. If anything, she was enjoying this. I knew then that this wouldn't stop. Not unless I made it stop. For the next few weeks, Karen ramped up her attacks. Anonymous letters started circulating through the neighborhood, letters warning that I was disrupting the harmony of the community and bringing down property values. She spread rumors that I was dangerous, aggressive, unwilling to follow rules. One day at the grocery store, I saw two neighbors whispering as I walked past. When I stepped up to the counter, the cashier, a woman who had been friendly just weeks ago, suddenly wouldn't meet my eyes. Karen was turning the whole damn town against me. Then came the final straw. One night, just after midnight, police lights flashed outside my house. I yanked open the door, heart pounding, and was met by two officers. One of them, an older guy with a tired face, stepped forward. "Sir, we got a report of a break-in on this property." My stomach dropped. "A break-in? There's no break-in." The officer checked his notes. Caller reported stolen property from a neighboring home, garden decor, patio furniture. A cold realization washed over me. Karen. The second officer peered past me into the house, as if expecting to see stolen patio chairs stacked in my living room. "Do you mind if we look around?" the older cop asked. I exhaled sharply, forcing myself to stay calm. "I mind a lot, actually. This is harassment. I know exactly who called you, and I guarantee you won't find anything." The two officers exchanged glances. I could see it in their eyes, they already knew this was bullshit. "Look," the older one said, "we have to follow up on reports. If this is a false claim, we'll deal with it accordingly." He left a warning with me before they left: "She's building a case against you." That was it. That was the moment I knew Karen wouldn't stop until she destroyed me. But she'd made a mistake. She thought I was just some guy she could push around. She had no idea I was already 2 steps ahead. I had spent the last few weeks digging into the HOA's finances, and what I found. was about to end Karen's reign of terror for good. The moment I found the financial records, I knew I had her. Karen had been embezzling HOA funds, redirecting maintenance budgets into personal home renovations, spa trips, and even luxury dining expenses. She wasn't just a power-hungry dictator, she was a thief. And the best part? She had documented everything. The more I dug, the more I realized how deep her corruption ran. I wasn't just going to expose her. I was going to destroy her. I contacted my lawyer, Dan Brooks, and laid everything out. He barely blinked as he flipped through the documents. "This is fraud," he said simply. "And when we go public with it, she's done." I had two moves to make. The first was legal. The second was public. Dan helped me draft a formal legal complaint that outlined the misuse of funds, falsification of HOA records, and targeted harassment against me. It was airtight. We submitted it to the state HOA commission, the county's fraud division, and the entire HOA board. Then, I made sure the whole neighborhood knew. I printed copies of Karen's shady financial records and mailed them to every single homeowner in the HOA. I attached a letter explaining how she had been weaponizing the HOA for personal gain and how she had lied, manipulated, and stolen from the very people she claimed to represent. The fallout was immediate. The emergency HOA meeting was called within 48 hours. This time, Karen wasn't in control. I arrived at the meeting early, taking a seat near the front. The tension in the room was thick, neighbors whispered in hushed tones, some clutching the same documents I had sent them. Karen walked in with false confidence, her expression carefully neutral. But I could see it, the stiffness in her shoulders, the way she refused to make eye contact. She knew she was cornered. Rick Langley, the HOA president, cleared his throat and started the meeting. His voice was strained. "We're here today to address some serious accusations brought against HOA leadership." Karen sat up straighter, forcing a polite smile. "Yes, I'd like to speak on that." Rick didn't acknowledge her. Instead, he turned to me. "Ethan, you filed the official complaint. Let's hear what you have." I stood, feeling the weight of every eye in the room. I didn't need to yell or get emotional. I just let the evidence speak for itself. I went through everything, the fake complaints, the harassment, the manipulation of HOA rules. And then, I laid out the financial fraud. I saw it happen in real time, the moment Karen lost them. The neighbors who had once been too scared to stand up to her now looked disgusted. Even her former allies, like Linda Thornton, looked betrayed. Karen tried to fight back. "This is ridiculous," she snapped. "I've done nothing wrong. This is a smear campaign orchestrated by someone who refuses to follow the rules." "Karen," Rick cut in, his tone sharp, "we've reviewed the records." Her mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. Rick turned to the board. "I think it's clear that the HOA has been mismanaged. And it's also clear we can't move forward with Karen in charge." A hushed murmur rippled through the room. Karen sat frozen, her knuckles white. Rick sighed. Effective immediately, Karen is removed from her position as HOA president. The silence that followed was electric. Karen shot to her feet. "You can't do this," she spat. "I built this community. I made the rules. You think you can just—" "Karen," Rick interrupted, rubbing his temples. "The board has spoken." Linda Thornton, once her most loyal ally, turned to her and shook her head. "We trusted you," she said quietly. "And you used us." Karen stared at her, then at the rest of the room. No one was on her side anymore. She grabbed her purse, storming toward the door. But before she left, she turned to me, eyes filled with pure hatred. "This isn't over," she hissed. I leaned back in my chair, smirking just enough to piss her off. "Oh, Karen," I said, my voice calm. "It's so over." She slammed the door behind her. For the first time since I moved here, I finally felt free. Karen was gone. The neighborhood felt different without her shadow looming over it. For the first time, people who had once avoided eye contact, whispered behind my back, or refused to get involved actually spoke to me. Some even apologized for staying silent for so long. The HOA, now under new leadership, sent a formal letter acknowledging my rights: no more fake violations, no more threats, no more harassment. I had won. But victory didn't feel as sweet as I thought it would. Sure, Karen had been removed, her reputation shattered, her power stripped away. But the fight had left its mark on me. I had spent months battling a system designed to break people down, and even though I had come out on top, I realized something unsettling. It would never really be over. The HOA might have changed leadership, but HOAs themselves? They never change. There would always be another Karen waiting in the wings, another board member eager to abuse their position. And I had no interest in sticking around to see who would step up next. Then one morning, a for sale sign appeared in Karen's yard. I stood at my window, sipping coffee, watching as she packed the last of her things into a moving van. She never looked in my direction, never acknowledged the fact that she had lost. It didn't matter. I had already made my decision. A few weeks later, I put my own house on the market. I found a new place, far from any HOA, somewhere I could truly live without looking over my shoulder. As I drove away for the last time, I glanced at Karen's empty house in the rearview mirror. I didn't stop. I didn't look back. Because in the end, the best way to beat Karen wasn't just to win the battle. It was to walk away completely. But that leaves me with one question: have you ever had to fight back against a power-hungry HOA or a Karen on a power trip? Share your experiences below. Let's see who had it worse.